Welcome to World Epic History. Today, we journey back to the 13th century, a time when thunder of hooves echoed across the plains of Europe. The Mongol invasion was not just a clash of armies, it was a moment when East and West collided in fire, fear, and awe. From the vast steppes rode warriors who nearly reshaped the fate of Europe forever. This is the story of how the Mongols came to the very heart of Europe and how the world was changed. The Mongol invasion of Europe began with the rise of the Mongol Empire, forged by the vision and power of Genghis Khan. By uniting the nomadic tribes of the steppe, he created the most disciplined cavalry the world had ever seen. His warriors moved with unmatched speed and struck with devastating force. As the empire expanded across Asia, whispers spread through Europe of a storm approaching from the east. After Genghis Khan's death in 1227, his empire did not collapse, but instead grew larger under his successors. It was divided into khanates, and one of the most important was the Golden Horde, ruled by his grandson Batu Khan. Unlike Genghis, whose campaigns focused on Asia, Batu Khan set his eyes firmly on Europe. The Mongol Empire now threatened to expand into the very heart of Christendom. Batu Khan did not act alone. At his side was Subotai, perhaps the greatest military strategist the Mongol Empire ever produced. Subotai had fought over 60 campaigns, mastering the art of mobility, deception, and psychological warfare. Together, Batu Khan and Subotai envisioned a conquest unlike any before, one that would test Europe's knights and kingdoms against the most fearsome cavalry the world had ever known. The Mongols struck first at the Rus, the fragmented principalities of Eastern Europe. Cities such as Ryazan, Vladimir, and Moscow fell in fire and blood. Entire populations were slaughtered or enslaved, their churches reduced to ashes. Survivors fled west with tales of an unstoppable horde. The Mongol Empire, born under Genghis Khan, was now pressing toward the gates of Europe under the command of Batu Khan. The Mongol army was unlike anything Europe had faced. Their soldiers were organized into tumans of 10,000, with strict discipline and perfect communication. Using signal flags, horns, and drums, they could coordinate attacks with deadly precision. European knights, trained for heavy charges, were no match for the speed of Mongol horse archers who rained arrows even while retreating at full gallop. Europe's defenses were woefully outdated. In 1240, the great city of Kyv became the next target. After a short siege, Mongol forces breached the walls and unleashed terror. Churches and homes were destroyed, thousands of people slaughtered. Once a beacon of Eastern Christianity, Kyv now lay in ruins. The fall of the city shook Europe's confidence, for if such a mighty city could fall so quickly, who could possibly resist? From Ukraine, the Mongols swept into Poland in 1241. They clashed with European knights at the Battle of Legnica. Duke Henry II of Silesia led his forces bravely, but Mongol tactics proved decisive. Feigned retreats drew the knights into traps, where arrows cut them down mercilessly. Duke Henry was slain, his army destroyed. The Christian kingdoms of Europe realized their strongest defenses had crumbled. Even as Poland burned, another Mongol army under Batu Khan and Subotai struck Hungary. At the Battle of Mohi in April 1241, King Bela IV assembled one of the largest armies in Europe. Yet it mattered little. The Mongols crossed the Sajo River under cover of smoke, outmaneuvered their enemy, and slaughtered tens of thousands. Hungary lay defenseless, its countryside devastated by fire and sword. With Hungary devastated, the Mongols roamed freely across Central Europe. Villages were reduced to ashes, monasteries destroyed, and survivors fled westward carrying stories of unimaginable horror. Batu Khan established his dominance across the plains of Hungary, using it as a staging ground for further expansion. The Mongol Empire, which began with Genghis Khan on the steppes of Mongolia, now stood at the threshold of Europe's heartlands. The speed of Mongol conquest stunned the Christian world. Armies that had taken decades to build were destroyed in days. Europe's feudal system, reliant on slow mobilization and fortified castles, proved ineffective against an enemy that appeared and disappeared like a storm. Letters from survivors begged the Pope and European monarchs to unite against the Mongol Empire. But unity among Christian kings was fleeting and fragile. The Mongols also brought with them intelligence networks. They used spies, captives, and scouts to learn the geography and weaknesses of their enemies. Before attacking, they mapped rivers, roads, and fortresses. This knowledge gave Batu Khan and Subotai a terrifying advantage, unlike Europe's fragmented kingdoms. The Mongol Empire coordinated its campaigns across thousands of miles with unmatched precision and speed. In the winter of 1241, the Mongols did not slow down. Unlike European armies that relied on harvest seasons, Mongol warriors carried herds with them and could endure the harshest winters. They pressed deeper into Austria and threatened Vienna. Chroniclers wrote that the terror of the Mongols seemed unstoppable, as entire populations fled before their advance, abandoning homes, fields, and churches to the ashes. Just as Europe braced for total collapse, an unexpected twist saved it. In December 1241, news reached Batu Khan that the great Khan Genghis, son of Genghis Khan, had died in Karakoram. By tradition, all princes of the royal line were required to return to Mongolia to elect a new great Khan. The advance into Europe stopped suddenly, as Batu and his generals turned back east. The retreat of the Mongols baffled Europeans. Many believed it was divine intervention, a miracle that saved Christendom. Yet the truth lay in Mongol politics. The succession crisis in the Mongol Empire took priority. For the death of a great Khan required unity. Europe had been spared not through strength of arms, but by the traditions that bound together the house of Genghis Khan. Although the Mongols withdrew, the scars remained. Hungary lay devastated, its population reduced by half. Poland's fields were empty, its towns burned. The memory of the Mongol invasion haunted Europe for centuries, reminding rulers of the terror brought by Batu Khan and Subotai. Europe realized how vulnerable it had been and how close it came to being swallowed by the Mongol Empire. The impact of the invasion reshaped European warfare. Castles were rebuilt with stronger walls, cities reinforced their defenses, and rulers sought new alliances. The legend of the Mongol Empire forced Europe to adapt. Though Genghis Khan was long dead, the shadow of his descendants lingered. Every king and knight remembered the thunder of hooves and the clouds of arrows that nearly ended their world. After the withdrawal, Europe lived in constant fear of a Mongol return. Chroniclers wrote of villages abandoned at the mere rumor of horsemen. Even decades later, kings prepared defenses for enemies who never arrived. The memory of Batu Khan's invasion created a permanent scar on European consciousness. Though the Mongols vanished eastward, the terror they left behind haunted generations like a shadow that never lifted. The Mongol Empire, forged by Genghis Khan, had shown Europe a kind of warfare it had never imagined. Lightning mobility, psychological warfare, and the destruction of entire regions were now part of Europe's collective fear. While knights and castles symbolized European defense, they seemed almost useless against the storms from the steppes. This clash revealed the gap between medieval Europe's traditions and Mongol innovation. Though the Mongols did not stay in Europe, their empire endured. Batu Khan established his rule over the Golden Horde, dominating the steppes north of the Black Sea for centuries. From his power base, the Mongols influenced trade, politics, and warfare in Eastern Europe. The name of Batu Khan was remembered not only as a conqueror, but also as the founder of a dynasty that shaped Russia's destiny. For Europe, the Mongol invasion served as a harsh lesson. It exposed the weakness of fragmented feudal kingdoms that could not unite in time. The Pope's calls for crusade against the Mongols fell on deaf ears as rival kings hesitated. Only luck and the death of Genghis prevented Europe from being absorbed into the Mongol Empire. Fate, rather than force, had saved the continent. The Mongols left behind not only destruction, but also fear of the unknown. They represented a world utterly alien to Europe. Nomadic horsemen, bound by loyalty to the house of Genghis Khan, who seemed to move faster than thought. To Europeans, they were the horsemen of the apocalypse, a punishment from God. Such was the terror that the mere mention of Mongols silenced even the bravest knights. In the decades that followed, European rulers studied the Mongols carefully. Some even sought alliances, sending envoys eastward to Karakoram. The fear of renewed invasion lingered, yet curiosity about the Mongol Empire grew. These exchanges carried back knowledge of distant lands, new technologies, and trade routes. The invasion had been devastating, but it also opened Europe's eyes to a far larger world. The Mongol armies never returned to Europe in full force, but the threat was always there, especially as the Golden Horde maintained dominance over the Rus for centuries. Europe watched nervously as Batu Khan's successors collected tribute, intervened in wars, and shaped politics far beyond their borders. The Mongol Empire had receded, but its influence over Eastern Europe remained powerful and undeniable. The Mongol invasion was remembered in Europe not as just another war, but as a cataclysm. It altered strategies, alliances, and even faith. To many Christians, it was proof of God's wrath, a divine punishment for sin. To others, it was a reminder of the fragility of kingdoms. From the ashes of 1241 rose a Europe more cautious, more defensive, and forever shaped by the fear of the steppes. The story of the Mongol invasion of Europe is one of contrasts: speed versus slowness, mobility versus rigidity, innovation versus tradition. Batu Khan and Subotai showed that victory did not always belong to the largest armies, but to those who fought with cunning and discipline. Against them, Europe nearly collapsed. It was a moment when the Mongol Empire stood at the brink of conquering the West. Had Batu Khan not turned back after Gegedei's death, history might have been different. Europe, divided and weakened, could have fallen under Mongol rule. The great cathedrals, the kingdoms of France and England, even the papacy itself might have become subjects of the Mongol Empire. The narrow escape reminded Europeans how fragile civilization could be when confronted by forces from beyond their world. Yet the Mongols, for all their terror, also connected worlds. Their conquests opened the Silk Road more securely, linking Europe and Asia. Even as they brought destruction, they also carried ideas, goods, and technologies across continents. The invasion of Europe had been brief, but it symbolized the reach of the Mongol Empire, born from the vision of Genghis Khan, stretching across the known world. For the people who lived through it, the invasion was unforgettable. Songs, stories, and chronicles spoke of the riders from the east whose arrows blotted out the sun. Even centuries later, the word Tatar evoked fear in Eastern Europe. The Mongols had left, but their legend endured. Batu Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, became immortal in Europe's memory as the man who nearly conquered the West. The Mongol invasion of Europe was more than a military campaign. It was a meeting of worlds. It forced Europe to confront its weaknesses, reshaped its defenses, and awakened it to powers beyond its borders. For the Mongol Empire, it was a demonstration of how far the vision of Genghis Khan had reached, carried on by Batu Khan, who brought fear and awe to the gates of Europe. In the end, Europe was spared by chance, not strength. The Mongols withdrew, yet the world they touched was forever changed. The invasion of 1241 remained a reminder of the fragility of kingdoms and the might of the Mongol Empire. The names of Genghis Khan and Batu Khan echoed across continents, symbols of both terror and empire. Europe survived, but it would never again forget the horsemen from the steppes.